Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
It's abortion insanity at the California State Legislature this year, this week, this month. Welcome to Right to Life Radio. Kind of somber as we are dealing with a state legislature that's pretty much completely out of control when it comes to their abortion mania. Basically, you have the bill AB 2333, which is basically a bill to legalize, more or less, infanticide. This is a bill that would take away all civil and criminal liability for perinatal death. So any newborn who survives an abortion, basically there's going to be no liability if you just decide not to provide that child with care. Similarly, the state legislature, that bill, AB 2223, I think I might have said 2333. It's 2223. AB 2223 just passed the California Assembly Judiciary Committee this past week, and our own Jonathan Keller will be here with us in a little bit to talk about the hearing as he was there. There were so many protesters, pro-life protesters, that they wound up shutting down the hearing, they wound up shutting down all of the pro-life opposition testimony. Because it would have just made the hearing extremely long. I think the pro-lifers outnumbered the pro-choicers something like 80-1. So that's probably the worst piece of legislation before the California legislature. But more globally, what we're seeing is a full court press on the part of pro-choice forces around the country, and particularly in California. They know, or they very, very strongly suspect, that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. Okay, that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned this June. They think that even if Justice Roberts tries to uphold it, the other 5 Republican appointees are going to overturn it. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, they know that something like half of all the American states are going to pass laws to limit abortion. And what California wants to do, and what these Democrat states want to do, is buttress up their individual state abortion laws. Michigan is having a huge push to enshrine abortion within their state constitution. Colorado just passed a law to make it explicitly clear in Colorado law that abortion is legal. And California is going a step farther. Gavin Newsom has said repeatedly he wants California to be a sanctuary state for abortion. A sanctuary state for abortion. And what he means by that is that he wants California to be this magnet for more or less abortion tourism. So if you live in a state that outlaws abortion, California is going to pass all these bills this year to facilitate you getting state funding to fly out here for an abortion, getting state funding for your lodging so you can have an abortion, getting state funding for your child care while you abort the child's sibling, eliminating all deductibles and copays, any out-of-pocket costs for your abortion. What other stuff are they going to do? Jonathan Keller from California Family Council, as he comes in and as we turn his microphone on.
Hi, everybody. Yes, it's good to be here. Sorry, we had a minor technical difficulty, but we're good.
So. No, we're good. We're good. So California is just in a full court press to do everything in their power to make this an abortion haven. You were just up in Sacramento this week, Jonathan.
Yeah. It was.
So tell us about what you were doing in Sacramento and the stuff you were hearing. You were there for the hearing on AB 2223, which is the bill to basically legalize infanticide in the state of California.
Yes, and I should say 2223.
2223. I think at the start of the segment I said 2333, but yeah, it's 2223.
And if you'd like to find out more, I will say we actually created a separate website just for this bill. It is very simply AB, like Assembly Bill, AB2223.org. AB2223.org. It has all the details about the bill. It has ways that you can engage pushing back. There is actually a lobby day, John, that we have coming up in 2 weeks.
Okay.
It is on Tuesday the 19th. There'll be a lobby day pushing back against the bill, and we've got all the stuff that you would possibly want to know about the bill. It's all available there at the website. There's the phone number for Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, where you can call both her capital office and her district office, and you can request that she withdraw the bill. There's talking points. There's links to all the different articles that this bill has been written about in the news. But, I mean, John, as you mentioned, it really is... it's not just another abortion bill. I mean, it's California literally has a baker's dozen of abortion bills that are out this year. So it is not just that. This is really, if it was
it's not
passed,
even abortion. It's really, this is a bill that it's legalizing what we call fourth trimester abortions. I mean, that's the joke. I mean, it's a horrible kind of joke to make. But that's really what's
that's basically
that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and really the way that you can say is that it's essentially the first of its kind. It would make California historic, and not in a good way. We would be the first state in the nation, in the history of the country, to legalize, or I should say decriminalize, infanticide.
Right.
And
and not just decriminalize it, but also provide incentives to actively prevent a district attorney or someone like that from even investigating it. To see if maybe someone was actively killing newly born babies. To see if, maybe at UC San Francisco. I mean, this is one of the things that Pro-Life San Francisco has really highlighted over the last year or two. Is that UC San Francisco, their Bixby Center for Reproductive Studies, which is basically the center of all evil in the state of California, as far as I'm concerned. It's basically, this is where they train OBs and OB nurse practitioners to do abortions. It's where they do late-term abortions. Actually, Jonathan, from our sidewalk ministry at Right to Life, we encountered a young woman who realized she was pregnant like 36 weeks along.
Wow.
And was told by Planned Parenthood, all right, we're going to get you scheduled to go up to San Francisco for an abortion.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's presumably...
No, John,
that's where
I've been
going.
reliably informed
However,
by people on Twitter that never happens.
Well, yeah. It never happens other than when it does. That's one of the hilarious things. People say, oh, late-term abortions are almost never happen. Meanwhile, there are only 10,000 late-term abortions in America per year, which is more than the total number of people who are killed by gun violence every year, according to the FBI. So, yeah, late-term abortions happen, and it's a small percentage of the total number of abortions, but you're still talking about 10,000 people here. Our friends from Pro-Life San Francisco have often raised the allegation that UCSF and other places that do late-term abortions are actually not performing late-term abortions, that they're actually, in many cases, killing delivered babies, and that what they're doing is illegal in a number of respects, but that these entities just have so little oversight from the liberal states, state regulators who preside over them, that they just get away with this scot-free.
So I would say the insanity, John, the legislature, as we mentioned, they have all these different bills that they're working on, but this one, it's a completely class by itself, which is why we spent so much focus on it. I do want to say, like you said, the abortion tourism angle, that bill was heard yesterday, and there was some very powerful testimony against that bill by State Senator Melissa Melendez. She really did. I just want to call her out in a good way, because she is a Catholic mom of five. Both she and her husband.
She's a Navy vet, too.
Yep. Just like your parents.
Just like my parents, yeah.
Both she and her husband are Navy vets, and
veterans, not veterinarians. But yes,
that is correct. Navy veterans, veterans of the U.S. Navy.
Yes.
And her two oldest sons, I found out, are also in the Navy.
Oh, that's cool.
But I had a great meeting with her in her office after the hearing, and she just knocked it out of the park, and just pointing out how completely insane these bills are. And also, I have to say, on 1245, I'm sorry, not 1245, SB 1142, one of these, the tourism bill, Molly Sheehan from the California Catholic Conference, did
Yeah.
a phenomenal job testifying against this bill, and she had extremely little time. Literally, she got her entire testimony in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
But
democracy in action in the California legislature. 90 seconds to decide a piece of legislation that's going to impact 40 million people. So.
Well, and in this case, potentially 340 million people, because this is the one that is potentially paying for abortions nationwide. And she made a great point, though. And if you go back and listen to her testimony, Molly's testimony, we'll chop that up and put that on the website as well. She did such a good job of pointing out, she used all the buzzwords that the left likes to use, things like equity and social justice and minority health disparities and things.
Right.
And she pointed out the fact that we have legitimately, as our friends on the left occasionally point out, it is true that when you look at statistics, there are higher maternal death rates among certain minority communities.
Right.
BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color.
Yeah.
There are
a lot of communities in South Fresno, especially where infant mortality rates are really, really high.
And it's tragic. And I think as pro-lifers, we should be concerned about those things.
We should do something like like a pro-life prenatal health care clinic to serve lower-income women. We could call it the Obria Medical Clinics of Central California.
And John, if our friends across the aisle, whether they are on the Fresno City Council or whether they are in the legislature up in Sacramento, if they really cared about these issues, maybe one of them could introduce a bill that helped fund some of these fully qualified medical centers like the Obria Medical Group. That would be great if we dedicated a huge amount of money out of our state surplus that Gavin Newsom keeps talking about into helping remedy some of these, horrible health disparities. But instead, and this was Molly's point, instead of meeting the needs of women and children who are right now being underserved, instead we would literally fly someone from Texas or Alabama or New Mexico or Kansas or Oklahoma, fly them out here to the
just
to
have an abortion. Just have an abortion.
It reminds me, John, online, you've probably seen that meme from like Pawn Stars where it says, hey, we'd like health care for our undocumented immigrants. And then it says, best we can do is a plane ticket for a free abortion.
Yeah. Well, so the Pawn Stars thing. So Pawn Stars was this show where basically these guys who own this pawn shop, people would come in with something, this really impressive item, and the guy who ran the pawn shop is the main character on the show and be like, well, best I could do for you is $20. like an incredibly low amount of money.
Right.
So this meme develops where people say, here's what we need. We need health care for minority communities. And so his completely underwhelming response is, best I can do is a free plane ticket so you can get an abortion. Yeah. And that's so true, is that the big health needs in Fresno County, and by the way, when you're talking about poverty in America, it's right here, all right? South Fresno, the greater San Joaquin Valley, we have some of the highest rates of poverty in the nation. Okay, you don't have to go to Appalachia to see poor Americans. We're poorer here than they are in Appalachia, wherever Appalachia is. This was a constant joke Holly and I had that kids at Notre Dame thought Appalachia was like a third world country.
It's in your backyard, you silly Indiana people.
Well, that's true. Like Southern Indiana was so much better. Like Northern Indiana was so much better. Anyway. All right, when we return, we're going to dig more into these issues, all of the insanity that's going on at the California legislature, our description of what it's like to go to the California legislature. Next on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening to Right to Life Radio. When Jonathan doesn't step on it, the best bumper music in the greater Fresno area radio market.
John, do you know the secret to all good comedy?
What?
Timing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan, I want for this segment, and maybe in the next segment too, but we'll start it here. Walk us through what it's like to go to the California legislature for a hearing. Okay?
Oof.
Because it's an interesting experience that I'm sure a very, very small percentage of the state ever gets to go to. And to see our fine republic in action, or the inaction of our fine republic, it really gives you a sense of how fundamentally broken the state is, how we pro-lifers often get screwed just by sort of the process of things over there. So maybe describe for us a little bit about, all right, so let's describe the structure of these committee hearings.
Well, I mean, John, the joke on so many different issues that you hear made, cliche is if you like sausage, you should never watch it being made.
Yes, you don't want to see how the sausage is ground.
And I would say, I don't know almost anybody that likes the California legislative process, and it's even worse when you actually see it up close.
Right.
I mean, it is as bad as the outcomes are. The inputs and the process are even worse.
It really it fits with my viewpoint that we are barely a republic. So anyway,
especially in California.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the structure of a legislative hearing. Okay. So the California legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, the Assembly has 80 members. The Senate has 40 members, which right off the bat, that raises some alarms because California has, relative to the size of our population, California has the smallest state legislature in the country. Yes. Our state legislators...
The least representative.
Yeah, we have the least representative state legislature in America. So our assembly members... Look, it's not difficult math. We have 80 assembly members, 40 state senators, and 40 million people. So our state assembly members are representing, on average, 500,000 people apiece. Our state senators are representing, on average, 1 million people apiece. Our state senators represent more people than members of the U.S. House of Representatives.
That is correct.
And they have these enormous districts sometimes.
And our state senators, by comparison, represent more people than the U.S. senators of, I think it's at least 5.
Of several states, yeah.
5 different states?
Right,
yeah.
Right. So... yeah, all the states that have fewer than 1 million people. So more than Wyoming and all these other places.
North Dakota. Yeah.
So first you have that, where it's a very small pool of legislators passing laws that have an impact on an enormous population of 40 million people. So if you're a lobbyist and you want the biggest bang for your buck, go to Sacramento. Like, don't bother wasting your time in D.C. D.C. is just marked by gridlock all the time. If you can just get Democrats to agree with whatever your idea is as a lobbyist, go to Sacramento. It's the most bang for your buck. The average member of the legislature there is representing a huge number of people, and they have one-party control. So as long as you can get leadership of the Democrats on your side, I mean, you're in.
Yes.
So this is why in Sacramento, I think lobbyists, there are like 10 lobbyists for every one legislator or some absurd figure like that.
It's closer
swarming with lobbyists.
It's closer to 15, I think.
Yeah. So the place is swarming with lobbyists, and they run the show in a lot of ways. The lobbyists, especially from the labor unions, SEIU, which is the big public sector labor union. I don't think, Jonathan, you go to the Capitol more than I do, but I don't think I've ever been to the Capitol when I didn't see a bunch of people in purple SEIU shirts walking around, roaming the halls on some piece of legislation or another. They totally dominate the chamber.
Well, and John, I'll tell
Both
you,
chambers,
it's honestly, in some ways, it's gotten even worse because of the last 2 years of COVID restrictions and everything, because now the legislature has moved. The annex is being demolished. Like the big building that they built way back in the 60s to contain the growth of the
like
committees
the offices
and everything.
Yes. Yeah.
That building is being demolished because of asbestos and the American with Disabilities Act and everything. They built an entirely new building that they literally are calling the swing space because it's only going to exist for a couple of years while they are remodeling the Capitol. But it is... When we come back, I'll tell a little bit more, but it's just crazy, the waste and the lack of efficiency at that building.
Right. When we come back, the unbelievable inefficiency of a California legislative hearing. Next on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Right to Life Radio, the best pro-life news and opinion podcast from sea to shining sea. Lila Rose, eat your heart out. Kristen Hawkins, eat your heart out. Abby Johnson, eat your heart out. We rule. You guys drool. Just kidding. Sort of. Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in. All right, guys. Jonathan, I want to talk about what it's like going to a California legislative hearing. You were at the hearing for... Not fun. You were at the hearing for AB 2223.
Yes.
Which is the bill in front of the California to legalize basically not providing care for a baby who survives abortion, so-called fourth trimester abortion, basically infanticide, to eliminate any civil or criminal liability surrounding perinatal death, as it's called. So this was in the Assembly Judiciary Committee. Is that correct? Right. Okay, so explain the process of you're sitting in this Assembly Judiciary Committee in the gallery, and how does it go?
So we were there. This was, John, one of the upstairs hearing rooms. So it's because the annex is being demolished. It's one of those smaller hearing rooms that has very few seats. As a result, they basically forced us to stay outside of the hearing room until we were actually about to testify. So it was a very short window. You weren't able to stay inside and pack out the hearing like you do in past things. But fortunately, they at least provide televisions that are outside, so we were able to watch the hearing from right outside the room. And it was a unique experience. It was a surreal experience because for this particular committee hearing, I think there's a couple of vacancies on the committee, and you are supposed to have normally 8 Democrats. There were 2 vacancies, so there were 6 Democrats. You were supposed to have a whopping 3 Republicans. So instead of being outnumbered 8-3, they were only outnumbered, or supposed to be outnumbered, 6-3. Okay, I mean, so hey, look, that's great. Only a 2-to-1 ratio that you're outnumbered. But in reality, 2 of the Republican members of the 3 were, for some reason, I mean, I don't want to impugn their motives, but for some reason, John, 2 of the 3 Republicans on that committee were unable to be there in person. They either had another hearing that was a conflicting time that they had to be at, or something. I don't know. One of those, unfortunately, Kevin Kiley, who is an attorney and a good attorney, and he's been generally good on a lot of the pro-life issues and other conservative issues. He's normally on that committee, but he was not there. We knew he wasn't going to be able to be there. But even his replacement, the substitute, Devin Mathis, who was supposed to be there, he was not there either. So that left Lori Davies as the sole Republican in the room when this bill was being heard.
Which is not great. Just to have literally one person who's maybe on your side.
And let me say this. I say this with respect to Ms. Davies. I don't know her personally. She seems like a perfectly nice person. But if you go to her profile online, Lori Davies is an American politician who serves in the California State Assembly. She represents the 73rd District encompassing southern Orange County. Prior to her election, she was the mayor of Laguna Niguel, a member of the Laguna Niguel City Council. She was elected in 2020. Okay, great. That's fine.
But just
you look at her occupation, John.
Yeah.
Events manager, wedding planner, and city councilwoman. She's on the Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, so you're saying maybe she's not quite equipped to deal with the legal impact of a piece of legislation that is eliminating criminal and civil liability for basically infanticide, especially unbriefed.
That's what I'm saying. And here's the thing: I don't want to be harsh or throw her under the bus. I'm sure that she is a wonderful person.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. I don't know.
We don't have any lawyers the Republicans don't have any lawyers they can stick on this.
Well, and pro-life people apparently. There's it's just incredibly frustrating that, again, this is not something against her in particular, but she basically had no substantive questions. She made one kind of half statement and asked a half question that said, well, I'm concerned by some of what I'm hearing here that, some citizens feel there's not enough transparency in this process, and that we need to have more opportunities for people to make their voices heard. But not a single substantive comment on the actual sake of, legalizing infanticide.
Yeah. Well, and it's, there's just the whole structure of these hearings that it's basically the people in favor of the bill wind up getting basically double the time to talk, more or less. I mean, no one's getting a ton of time here. This is not exactly, Athenian, the glory of Athenian democracy or anything going on here. But
well, John, let me just give it as a comparison to after the hearings yesterday. When I was I recorded this interview that I'm talking about on Wednesday.
Yeah,
my counterpart in Maine was asking, so how does the hearing work? And I mentioned all this, and I said, and then essentially
we have like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, you have 2 minutes, and then everybody that they cycle through. John, this time they did something that they don't normally do. They limited the time that we could actually have people there to testify because they didn't want it to go extra long. So even though there were lots of people waiting on hold trying to voice their concerns, they cut it off after like 15 minutes.
Right.
Even though there was people that were texting us and calling us and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to call in and it says the lines are full." I mean, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were on the line trying to get in on this one. After 15 minutes, they said, that's enough. We don't need to hear anymore. But the reason that I bring all of this up is that when I shared this with my pal from Maine, I said, basically you get 2 minutes of testimony. Maybe you get some questions if you're very lucky. But the entire hearing, it's very rare that from start to finish, these hearings last more than 30 minutes.
Right.
If it's incredibly contentious, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe.
Sure. But and then, of course, depending on who is dominating from the dais as far as the number of legislators, like I've been to some of these hearings where like the pro-life side, over the course of 30 minutes of this hearing, the pro-life side gets like 2 of the 30 or 3 of the 30.
That's basically it.
So it's
there was no, even though we had 2 attorneys, pro-life attorneys in the room that provided expert witness testimony. We had Susan Arnall from the Right to Life League of Central California.
Of Southern California.
Southern California? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
And Katie Glenn, who is policy director with American Life League.
Right.
Sorry, excuse me. I did that in...
Not ALL.
Yeah. Americans United for Life.
Okay, there we go.
Back out of D.C. They were both there. They had excellent expert testimony. They are both attorneys.
Yeah.
And nobody on the committee, surprise, surprise, asked them a single question.
Of course not. No, they don't really care.
But to put it, John, in more perspective of how this compares to other states, when I'm talking to my counterpart from Maine, I said, and then they voted on the bill and it was out all within, under an hour. And he goes, wait a minute. What, you
under an hour?
He said, you vote on it the same day? And I said, yeah, what do you mean? He goes, well, for us, after we have the first hearing, we have to take 8 days off to come back and have a working committee. So then we can discuss and debate the bill more. And then at the second hearing...
And offer amendments and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
And he says in the second hearing... With the same committee, with the second hearing in the same committee, they will not just vote, but they'll call witnesses back. They'll ask for clarifying information.
Sure.
They'll do amendments.
Yeah.
And
so
I said,
this is a constant idiotic thing that the California legislature does. Is that, okay, an assembly member brings his bill to the committee, his or her bill to the committee. They look at it, they debate it, they point out all these problems with it, but because it's usually a Democrat who's introduced the bill and Democrats on the committee, and they say, oh, this bill has a lot of problems, they need to fix this. I'm going to vote on it, but let's talk in the future about So they're voting on these bills that they know they don't like, and you're going to amend it, you're going to amend it going forward. So the idea that, and I always wondered, like, how is this system so stupid? And then, of course, any state that's apparently whose legislature is governed by people with brains in their heads is able to figure out, just have the hearing, take a week off to introduce all your amendments, and then actually vote on the thing so that you know actually what you're voting for and you can be held accountable, as opposed to the current California system, which is so stupid that people get a piece of legislation, it's garbage, but they're just passing it along because leadership tells them to. So anyway, it's John, unbelievable how moronically
you mentioned that
our committees work.
You mentioned that though, and that did not happen in this case with AB 2223, but with the other bill that we were talking about, the abortion tourism bill.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. And literally, we're going to post the video on the California Family Council website. State Senator Melissa Melendez was asked a phenomenal question. She was grilling Anna Caballero, who's the author of this bill, and Nancy Skinner, who was the other author. They were co-authors. And I could have stood up and screamed in the middle of this hearing because she said, so how are you going to determine, who gets this money and where's the money coming from and who all is it going to? And she's asking these very basic questions.
Very fundamental questions for a bill that's designed to fund things.
And they said, well, we haven't exactly determined that yet. And she said, so
how can we even vote on this?
Yes. And literally, do you know what the response was? Senator Nancy Skinner, literally, she laughed at this other senator, Melissa Melendez. She goes, well, I can show you. I've got about 6 bills that, we still haven't worked out all the funding mechanisms for. So, it's just how it goes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And these idiots are voting for things. They're voting for things that they know aren't right, and they just say, mañana. Like what the flip? Like how they have the calmness to put their names to bills that they don't even think will work, that they know are just in process. It just makes a mock. Okay, the California legislature has a number of deadlines.
Yes.
Deadlines you got to hit. So you got to introduce all the legislation that you're going to hear over the course of that legislative year by February. What is it, John? I think it's February 15th or end of February or something. You got to, have your first policy committee hearings done by this date. You have to have the financial committee hearing by this date. You have to pass the bill in one house by this date. You got to get it to the next house. And what they're doing is they just view these pieces of legislation as just kind of vehicles. We'll work it out over the course of time here. We'll just, make our adjustments as we go. We know it's not. We know it's not actually properly written yet, but we'll
John,
figure it out.
Look, you got to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
Yes, in the immortal words, of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, we got to pass the bill to figure out what's in it.
But
that's our whole legislative system in California.
Yes,
so.
And it is something that that it would never pass. It would never It would never fly. The bill would not pass, and that strategy would not fly if it was not the sacrament of the far left, which is abortion. If it was a pro-life legislator, if this was, Jim Patterson, or if this was Shannon Grove, or if this was, Brian Dolly, or any of these other pro-life people who were trying to pass a bill, they would completely get squashed.
Of course.
And it's just absolutely infuriating that as we say so often, the abortion distortion, it doesn't just apply to the law after it's been made. It doesn't just apply to court decisions. It even applies to the legislative process itself.
The thing motivating all of this insanity, the looming overturning of Roe v. Wade. We'll talk about that and how it's impacting legislation throughout the country next on Right to Life Radio. Right to Life Radio, being played in by a little CCR. Thank you all so much for tuning in on this fine Saturday morning. All right, Jonathan. So the insanity that we're seeing this year at the California legislature is all being motivated. It's all being prompted by the looming overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
As someone's iPhone is ringing in the background there. Oh, it's just Raphael. That's okay. So the looming overturning of Roe v. Wade is motivating the California legislature to make California an abortion sanctuary, to basically pay for people to fly to California to get abortions, pay for abortions for out-of-state people.
I have to tell you on this, because you mentioned there is this, in the leftists' mind, there is this harrowing, nightmare reality that the Supreme Court is going to overturn Roe versus Wade using the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, and that somehow instantaneously abortion is going to be illegal in all 50 states and all of our territories. And literally the things that we heard yesterday, not from Buffy Wicks on AB 2223, but on SB 7 or 1142 and SB 1245, the insane hyperbole,
Right.
that we are forcing women to remain pregnant. We are co-opting their bodies. We are literally forcing them to give birth. And the most disconnected from reality thing that I heard, John, one of the senators, I think it was Senator Kamlager, literally said, I have to tell you, there are women in Texas right now. They've come from the southern border, and they are refugees from Afghanistan. They have escaped from Afghanistan, and they've escaped from Afghanistan after being raped by Taliban soldiers, and they are pregnant. And they cannot get an abortion in Texas, so they are coming to California.
That sounds like
Taliban,
an incredibly fake story.
We have Afghani women pregnant with Taliban rapist babies that are desperately trying to come to California because we are the only beacon of hope that will help them in this dire situation. And I'm like,
they could go to literally any state other than also like. No, there are like so many improbabilities to that story that, geez, also just the dehumanization of the unborn children involved here who didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, I mean it sounds like just complete and utter nonsense.
I mean, John, on all of these things, it is the left. I know they say don't cross the streams, but
yeah.
I'll be a little opaque. I will say there are certain types of moral panic that the left is accusing the right of. They're saying, why are you complaining about this concern? Why do you think that you need to pass a particular type of bill in a sunshiny state to deal with a concern that the right has about certain issues?
Right. Well, like...
And then that's the exact thing that the left is doing to the nth degree.
Well, it also belies the whole thing. I mean... There was, I believe, federal legislation that was introduced during the Trump administration that would have explicitly prevented, so-called fourth trimester abortions, the kinds of things that are being legalized under AB 2223, basically to prevent any state from legalizing the deprivation of care to a child just because they are unwanted. Permitting perinatal death. The Republicans in Congress tried to pass legislation to stop that at a federal level, and the Democrats blocked it, saying, oh, that's unnecessary. Oh, that's not necessary. And clearly, here we are in California about to pass legislation like this, and it's clearly necessary. I think the hysteria from the left about overturning Roe v. Wade is real because, in part, Jonathan, I remember the last really big abortion case that the Supreme Court had, June Medical Services v. Russo.
Yes.
And that was about Louisiana passing all these restrictions that abortion doctors needed to have admitting privileges at a hospital within a certain number of miles. It would have basically shut down most abortion clinics in Louisiana if the decision had gone the right way. And we heard rumors in advance that John Roberts had flipped and that it was going to be a bad decision for us. We have not heard any rumors like that about Dobbs, which is the case that's going to be overturning Roe v. Wade.
It's surprisingly tight-lipped.
Yeah, I think everyone's sort of thinking that, the Supreme Court's really going to do it. They're really going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Whether Roberts is in the majority or isn't, that seems quite clearly what's going to happen. And it's driving the liberals nuts. And I hope all of these pro-life states are ready to go with legislation to protect unborn children, protect mothers, do everything in our power to protect those in need. So that's life. Thank you, Frank Sinatra. That was a really corny song choice for a pro-life show. Oh, that's life. Hey, sounds like something a 68-year-old pro-lifer would have thought to do. And here we are doing it on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next week on Right to Life Radio.